How's it going, everyone? It's me, Lone, and welcome back to another Fallout 76 video. So as we know, bottle caps are used as the main currency in the world of Fallout. Obviously, before the Great War, the entirety of the USA would use what's now known as pre-war money. But once the Great War finished, the nuclear fallout started to subside, and communities and economies started to crop up across the wasteland. Bottle caps again became the main form of currency, predominantly in the form of Nuka-Cola bottle caps. And pre-war money in this era is more seen as a collectible, although it still has somewhat of a value amongst traders. However, when we look at the Fallout 76 gameplay, some picked up on the fact that caps will be returning as a form of currency. For instance, when you kill another player, you will get some bottle caps as a reward. But some have questioned why. Why in West Virginia, only 25 years after the Great War, pre-war money is not used as the main form of currency? Given such a relatively short period of time after the Great War, does it make sense that Vault 76 inhabitants would swap to using bottle caps as opposed to using the currency that they've been using their entire lives up until that point? In essence, have bottle caps just become a quirk of Fallout, or is there some sort of law reason behind why they could be used in West Virginia? Well, to answer this, it's going to require a little bit of deep diving into the lore of Fallout and into the reasons why bottle caps were ever used as the main form of currency in the first place. And to do so, I've used both the fandom and Gamepedia Fallout wikis, both of which are linked in the description below. So let's do this. In Fallout's version of California, now called New California, resides a large trading post known as the Hub. Now, being a trading city, there needed to be a form of currency for the people to utilize to buy, sell, and trade items. But why didn't they just continue to use pre-war money? Well, the US dollar is what we know as fiat money, a currency that actually has no internal value, but rather is deemed as being money by government regulation, and the value is actually backed by a government institution. But of course, now in the world of Fallout, there is no more US government that can fulfill this role, so effectively, pre-war money is almost valueless. So traders within the hub came to another solution. They would adopt bottle caps as the main form of currency. Because the Great War had occurred, it was of course the case that no more bottle caps were being produced, and therefore there was a limited number in the world, which somewhat negated the effects of inflation, which apply in our own real world. Moreover, this meant that bottle caps were almost impossible to counterfeit. And also because Nuka-Cola bottles were so popular, there was still a viable amount of bottle caps in the wasteland, such that it could be used as a form of currency, even though they were still limited in number. But also as well, they were still somewhat scarce in number, even though there were arguably more bottle caps than pre-war money. So for all of these reasons, traders in the hub viewed bottle caps as a good substitute for pre-war money. But initially in the West Coast US, bottle caps were actually backed by the value of water, kind of like how a government will back the value of a particular currency. However, on the East Coast of the US, bottle caps, whilst also being used as the main form of currency, weren't really backed by anything or anyone. So it's actually unknown as to who guarantees their value. It's likely possible that, given all of the above factors, such as their limited nature, their difficulty to counterfeit, and their relative scarcity without being too difficult to find, Americans on the East Coast just agreed that caps will be a good form of currency. And now we understand another way that fiat money can come about, whereby two parties just come to an agreement that something in particular is valuable and can be treated as currency, even though that currency has no intrinsic or internal value. So when you look at bottle caps, they are completely useless in and of themselves, but it seems that everyone on the East Coast just agrees that they are a good form of money. But again, this is just on the East Coast. Initially in the West, bottle caps were backed by the promise of water. So technically, they weren't fiat currency there originally. Now this situation becomes much more muddied with the introduction and later destruction of NCR dollars, which were backed by gold, which is why in the Mojave, bottle caps were used again as a main form of currency. But we're not going to be covering that in this video. All we need to know right now is that because Fallout 76 is set in West Virginia, which is also on the East Coast of America, we can presume that bottle caps would operate in a fiat fashion just like they do in Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland and also Fallout 4's Commonwealth. So believe it or not, this is probably why West Virginians would also use bottle caps as currency in the state, rather than regular US or pre-war dollars. They probably saw all the same challenges of continuing with that kind of currency, again, as it was no longer backed by a central government, and thus they viewed bottle caps as a more viable form of currency. They were limited, they had some protection against inflation, and they could not be counterfeited easily. Now I know some of you might be asking, well, wouldn't regular pre-war money on the East also meet these characteristics? They're also limited, as the machines that used to print them are probably destroyed, so they too can't really be counterfeited, and also as well, inflation wouldn't be much of an issue as they can't keep being printed. The arguments that I personally saw against this is that again, bottle caps are probably in larger supply than pre-war money, especially because they're more sturdy and resilient than mere paper. And again, Nuka-Cola bottles were mass manufactured, so there would likely be a larger number of caps in the world than pre-war money, and therefore there'd be more currency to go around. If a form of currency is too hard to find, which pre-war money kind of is, then perhaps it doesn't make for the best currency. And again, mentioning the fact that bottle caps are much more resilient, people on the East Coast and in West Virginia probably saw them as much more reliable. They wouldn't be so easily destroyed in a post-apocalyptic wasteland than regular paper pre-war money. Also, when it comes to Vault 76 residents, who we know will be the only human NPCs in West Virginia when they emerge out of the vaults, would they have actually thought to bring in as much of their paper cash into the vaults as possible? They probably just gathered together the essentials and rushed into the vaults when the sirens were sounding and the bombs were dropping. And so, when they emerged out of the vault 25 years later, they would still need a form of currency. And again, bottle caps were probably viewed as the best option, because of all the reasons we already mentioned above. But yes, I'll admit there are some difficulties here, but those difficulties also extend to the use of bottle caps on the East Coast period. Because mentioning again on the East Coast, bottle caps aren't backed by anything. They're not backed by water like they were on the West Coast. So the only reason that I could find in terms of why West Virginians and anyone on the East Coast would be using bottle caps were again their limited nature, etc. But again, more to the point as to why bottle caps would be used over pre-war money, because they were much more sturdy and resilient. So I'm assuming that West Virginians and anyone on the East Coast were like, well, why am I going to be using pre-war money if it could easily be destroyed? Why wouldn't we all agree upon a form of currency that would actually last for many years, like bottle caps? But anyways, Wastelanders, those are just my thoughts. I would love to get your opinions in the comments below. Did I make any mistakes about this? I think I got the law right, but the law is a little bit muddied on the East Coast. So I was trying to figure out ways to get around it, and it was really, really difficult, I'll admit. So anyways, that's all from me. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.